Hello, everyone. I want to talk to you guys about the Resident Evil 4 remake. I have not completed the game. I am currently in the castle of the royal Spanish family of Ramon, the evil dwarf. But I want to give you guys my thoughts on the game, what I think about it so far. I love this game so far. I think this game is a lot of fun. I think it's great. This was the game that I was looking forward to last year. Last year, when they made the announcement that they were making a remake for Resident Evil 4, I was just, I was in anticipation. From the moment that I saw the trailer and the gameplay trailer to, until the moment that I finally got my hands on the game, uh, I this was the game that I had been looking forward to. I have not finished it, but my thoughts on it so far. I think it's a great game. The you know the gunplay in this game is really good. I have never seen a game with gun sound effects as good as the ones that are in the Resident Evil 4 remake. I haven't seen them. I have not seen this. I haven't seen gun sound effects as good as this since I played the Division 2. Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2 had great gun sound effects, but those were with guns from the Wild West. But as far as modern day guns go, the Resident Evil 4 remake just has such clean shots. The way that a lot of games, what they do, is they first give you really garbage weaponry. They give you really garbage weapons that don't sound cool. They have weak sound effects, and they just don't sound good. This game starts you out with this basic 9mm pistol, and it sounds badass. When you enter the village and the villagers are attacking you and you pull the trigger, it just has this. It just sounds powerful. Even though it doesn't. Even though the initial pistol that you're given in the game isn't really that powerful, it sounds awesome. And that's what matters, right? It just sounds awesome. Of course, power matters, but you want to enjoy the experience. And I personally, I just can't enjoy a video game experience when the guns sound like something out of those old black and white cowboy movies, or I like that. I mean, it just sounds powerful. It sounds scary. I like it. When you get the 12 gauge shotgun in this game, it is just so much fun. It's just badass. You get that 12 gauge shotgun. Those zombie villagers are coming after you. Mátalo, te voy a hacer a picadillo. I'm gonna make you into picadillo. I mean, these are Spanish zombies, which is such an original idea. I've heard of American zombies and all that, but this was like the first game that just incorporated. I think it's the only game. I don't think a film has ever done this before, but it's just the only video game that has Spanish speaking zombies. Like, these are zombies that sound Mexican. I mean, it's just so original. It's so entertaining. And they're like, acá, mátalo. Lord Sadler, as they die. Or they say, of course, te voy a hacer a picadillo. I'm going to make you into picadillo. It's creepy, but it's fun at the same time, and you get your hands on that 12 gauge shotgun in the village. And the way that the game does it is so cool. It's true to the original Resident Evil 4 that was made back in 2005. You go into the house as the villagers are chasing after you. You grab that shotgun and you just blast away. and you put the slugs into the shotgun, and when Leon Kennedy cocks that shotgun, it's like, I mean, it just sounds real. It sounds like a movie. You know, when you watch a good action film or a good thriller, the characters have guns and they sound real. They sound intense. And that makes for a great cinematic experience. And this game really does that. It has that effect. It doesn't give you some lame ass sounding weapon in the beginning to incentivize you to find the guns that sound cool. No, it gives you a cool sounding gun right in the beginning. It gives you that shotgun. It gives you that pistol. Now, the game is very much close as far as the story goes. It's very close to the original Resident Evil 4, but they are changes here and there. The dialogue is still good, but so far I'm finding the original dialogue in Resident Evil 4, the original Resident Evil 4 dialogue to be better. For example, when you first meet Luis, you get ambushed by the cult, and they tie you and Luis together. You know, you're both wrapped around with a rope, and you're talking about your experiences as police officers. And Luis is this scientist, but you know, he's this former Spanish police officer, and he says, "Oh, I was a cop once. Yeah, policia. You put your life on the line, and for what? Nobody appreciates you anymore." And that dialogue isn't there, you know. And then there's that part where, you know, Luis and Leon Kennedy are both tied up. I'm assuming they're both terrified. I mean, pretty certain Leon Kennedy is nervous because he's about to be killed by a cult. About to be ritually sacrificed. Luis Serra is a scientist who's somewhat working with the cult, but he knows the cult is evil, so who knows what's going through his mind. But in this moment, in this terrifying moment of being tied up and kept in confinement by this cult, Luis Serra says, "Gotta smoke." I mean, it's this humor that cuts through the horror of the video game. It's this comedic relief. And Luis Serra says to Leon, "Gotta smoke," and Leon says, "Got gum." That dialogue isn't there, you know. But other than that, so far, this game is a blast. I love it. You know, for a while, I've been thinking maybe I'm getting too old for video games. Because last year I started playing Elden Ring, and you know, I heard so much hype for Elden Ring, so much hype for it. They say it was the greatest game ever. It's such a good game. Blah blah blah. It won Game of the Year. So last year I got the game, not after the E3 awards, but before, months before, and I started playing it. And Elden Ring is a great game. Don't get me wrong. Elden Ring is a great game. The graphics are beautiful. The music is masterful. Really, it's some of the best music I've ever heard in a video game. It gives you Lord of the Rings vibes. I mean, the game is called Elden Ring, and it does have some... I mean, it seems to me that it has some influence from the Lord of the Rings. It's a great game, but there's something about Elden Ring, and I know, right? All the hardcore gamers are going to say, "Oh, yeah, you're not a real gamer, or you can't fully appreciate the beauty of Elden Ring or whatever, the greatness of Elden Ring." But there's just something about Elden Ring, as beautiful of a game as it is, there's something about Elden Ring that is just annoying. And in a way, boring. I mean, Elden Ring has its good qualities. It has very good characteristics, but it's a boring game. I mean, to a certain extent, it's a boring game. oh, the world is so huge. It's such a big game. You know, you can travel so much, you can explore so much. But in my time in the lands between, as the world is called in Elden Ring, I found myself just finding dungeons. And there's like every area in the game, you have multiple dungeons. And they all seem the same. There's not a whole lot of difference between the dungeons. And you find yourself fighting the same exact bosses. And the game feels very monotonous. At times, the game feels like a broken record. At times, the game feels redundant and annoying and irritating. And you have these bosses that are not very interesting. There are some very interesting bosses in the game. Don't get me wrong. I liked the king, whatever his name was. He was the first Elden Lord. I think he looks really cool. I think that there's some. I really liked the first major boss they have you fight in Castle Stormville. I'm trying to remember his name. I don't remember his name. Whatever. But he's the guy who's got a big staff, and he keeps telling you, you know, put away these foolish ambitions. That guy. If you played Elden Ring, you know what I'm talking about. I liked him. I thought he was a cool boss. There are some cool bosses in the game. Don't get me wrong. But my God, they are some very, very annoying bosses. And they start you out in the game with some lame ass weapons. I mean, lame weapons from the beginning. Like, I started out as a samurai. That's the character that I picked, the samurai. Margit, that's the name of the... Margot. Is it Margot or Margit? That's the name of... That's... One of those is the name of the boss that I refer to. But they give you this lame... They give you these lame ass weapons in the beginning of the game. Just lame. Like, I started out as a samurai, so they give you the katana, and you can upgrade the katana, but the katana that they give you, I forgot the name of it, but the katana that they give you, even when you upgrade it to a very high level, it's still not as good as some of the other swords that you have to go find. So you have to go out and find other swords. So I found other katanas. So they start you out with the Uchigatana. That's the name of the katana that you first start out with. But then you can find like the Nagakiba. There's some other ones. So I went from the Uchigatana to the Nagakiba. And the Nagakiba, you know, great sword, a lot of range, very long samurai sword, and it can be very powerful against a lot of enemies. But you'll find yourself fighting other enemies that the Nagakiba doesn't really do much to. And the way that the sword moves, it's like, oh, dude, it's not interesting. Like when I'm playing a game with weapons, which is pretty much every game that I play. I really don't play games that don't involve weapons, right? I'm not sitting around playing. I don't know. I'm not sitting around playing like FIFA all the time. I'm not sitting around playing. I don't know, some Mario game. But even in Mario, they have weapons. But I like to play games that have weapons, guns, swords, you know. And the sword action in Elden Ring, it's like, shh, shh, shh. It's like, where's the cool movements? Like, before I played Elden Ring, I played a game called Shadow of War, and it's a game that's part of it's a Lord of the Rings based video game. Okay, Shadow of War. I think that's what it's called, Shadow of War. It's basically a game that's based off of Lord of the Rings, and it's I wouldn't call it a ripoff, but it's a story that takes place in the Lord of the Rings universe. And I really enjoyed Shadow of War. You know, I liked it. Why? Because it was fun. It was fun. It had its difficulty. Man, some of the orcs in Shadow of War are difficult in the beginning. But the cool thing about Shadow of War is that you can do certain things with the buttons that make your character do basically medieval Jason Bourne movements. You know, the Jason Bourne or the John Wick movies, how the choreography. You can do just by doing simple counter moves or counter strikes in the game. Your character will automatically do some really cool moves, spinning around like Gladiator, like Maximus in the movie Gladiator, spinning around. You're beheading orcs, and you can do it in a way where it's done in as chain attack. So you'll have like 12 orcs around you, and they're all attacking you at the same time. But because you can do these counters, it's just cinematic movement after cinematic movement. You're chopping heads off, you're chopping legs off, you're chopping orcs in half, you're chopping limbs in half. It is just crazy. You're just like Maximus in Gladiator in that scene when he takes the two swords and decapitates the guy and he says, "Are you not entertained?" I mean, you do moves like that. And it's like, wow, this is fun. It's fun. Like, to me, games need to be fun. And if you think Elden Ring is fun, okay, that's your preference. I'm not bashing people for liking Elden Ring. I'm giving my personal opinion. Elden Ring is a cool game as far as its aesthetics, its music, its lore is interesting. I got into the lore. In fact, I was more interested in the lore than the gameplay, to be frank. But the movements in the action, the fight moves in Elden Ring are just not interesting. When you play Resident Evil 4, the remake, there's just so many different movements you can do in Resident Evil 4, the remake, Resident Evil 4 remake. You can shoot a zombie, and then you can do this knife move that you can hit the knife attack button, where it goes into a cinematic, and you're doing some John Wick stuff to the zombies. It's freaking cool. It's entertaining. You can have like 15 zombies in a room trying to kill you, and they're armed with axes, and they're speaking Spanish, and they're armed with shovels and pitchforks, and they're trying to kill you, and they're screaming "Mátalo!" And it's just fascinating. It's like, wow, this evil Spanish cult is trying to kill me. And you take your pistol out, and you're just like John Wick in this damn game. You're just like, boom, shoot. You put a bullet in the chest, bullet in the head, take the knife right to the temple, right to the neck. I mean, you're doing like spinning back kicks, roundhouse kicks. It's like a John Wick zombie movie. It is so cool. It's so cool. The original Resident Evil 4 was a masterpiece of a game. I mean, this cannot be said enough how revolutionary Resident Evil 4 was back in the early 2000s. It was the first game that utilized the over-the-shoulder camera angle. I mean, no game had that before. And Resident Evil 4 influenced great games that would come out later, like the Gears video games, Gears 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on. The Gears games were great. They were great. And one of the things that made those games great was the over-the-shoulder camera angle. It's so good. Before Resident Evil 4, third-person shooters were like Mario. I mean, as far as the camera angle went, it was like playing Mario 64. The camera's kind of up in the air, it's moving around. But that Resident Evil 4, when it came out back in 2005, it was amazing. It was revolutionary. And the graphics were so good for its time. The music was so creepy. It was so dark. And yet there were these moments of humor, especially with Luis. And, there's that great scene. And they did not take this out in the remake, and I'm so glad that they didn't. There's a great part. It's really funny. Well, it's not really funny, but it's kind of funny in a corny, cheesy way. And it's great for nostalgia because, you remember playing the game back in the early 2000s. But there's a part where you're killing these zombies in the village, and then all of a sudden the church bell rings, the church bell for the cult, and all the zombies are like, they're like, "Tenemos a ir," which means we have to go, and they're like, "Oh," one zombie goes, "Oh, la campana," which means the bell is ringing, we have to go. And Leon Kennedy just throws his hands up and he says, "Where's everybody going? Bingo." Like, I remember seeing that back in the early 2000s and back in 2005 when I played Resident Evil 4. And I mean, I didn't think that was super funny, but here I am playing the remake, and I'm hoping that the original dialogue is there, and they kept that in there, and it's so great. And of course, we can't forget the merchant, right? The merchant is such an iconic video game character. He's one of the most iconic characters in the world of video game lore, and especially in the Resident Evil game universe, he's definitely one of the most memorable characters. And there is the infamous line from the merchant, "Ha ha, not enough." The merchant, for those of you guys that don't know, is the guy that you go to buy guns and to upgrade your weapons. And you can also sell things to him, so you can get money, pesetas, the Spanish currency, so you can buy weapons and tune them up and make them better. And when you don't have enough money to buy a particular good, to buy a particular product, he says, "Not enough cash, stranger." And of course, they didn't get rid of that because that is one of the most iconic lines in the Resident Evil world. I really love the Resident Evil universe. I think it really is my favorite. Okay, it's my favorite video game universe. It's my favorite video game world. I love the Resident Evil games. I fell in love with the Resident Evil universe back in 2005 when I got my hands on Resident Evil 4. The first time I heard about Resident Evil was back in the 1990s when my uncle told me about it. I have this uncle who, back in the day, he had this old PlayStation. Of course, that's what people had, right? You had a PlayStation. This was before PS2. And I was like, oh, I want to play video games because I didn't have any video games at that time. I didn't have an N64. And he had this PlayStation in his room, I remember. And I was like, oh, I want to play a game so badly. So he's like, oh, what do you want to play? I was like, well, what do you have? And he had like Die Hard, and then he had this game called Resident Evil. I'm like, oh, what's that? He goes, oh, don't play this game. It's scary. He's like, your mom will get upset if I let you play this game because it's real scary. So it kind of stuck to my brain, like, what is this game? I want to play. Like, it piqued my curiosity. And then years and years later, back in 2005, I went to this back in California. I'm not sure if it's still there, actually. It may be. But back in California, we had this store called Fry's. And Fry's is like a mall. I'm not even sure if it still exists. But Fry's Electronics, is it still around? Yeah, it's still around. Or was. Hold on. Actually, no, it doesn't. Oh, it ceased operations in 2021. Okay, how sad. But we had this thing called Fry's back in California. And it doesn't exist anymore. I just found this out just now recording this video. Fry's was like a mall for electronics. It was one of the greatest places in the world. Like, Fry's was just an amazing place. It was such a fun place because they had everything there. Imagine going to a mall where everything that is sold is electronics. Everything. Different softwares they were selling. Different types of programs. Different types of write programs. Just everything. They had everything. Different types of computers. Just a huge plethora of different things that you could buy. Such a huge selection. And they had this huge video game section. It was so awesome. They had this huge video game section. And I remember going to the Fry's and seeing they had these TV screens everywhere. And they would be playing video game trailers nonstop for upcoming games. And I remember looking at this screen, and it was the beginning of the original Resident Evil 4 trailer. That trailer grabbed my interest so effectively. We're talking about it was pretty good marketing. They had Leon Kennedy with the machine gun blasting away at these zombies with rock and roll music in the background. And it was amazing. And I remember seeing that, and it said Resident Evil 4. And I remember hearing about Resident Evil from my uncle. So I thought, I gotta get this game. I have to. And I did. And I couldn't stop playing it. Such a good game. Such a good game. Like the cult, the music. And one of the reasons why I fell in love with Resident Evil 4 was just it's like the theme of the story was so cool. It wasn't just the gunplay. It wasn't just the sound effects. It wasn't just the action. It wasn't just the sheer intensity of the game. Watching Dr. Salvador coming after you with a chainsaw, which was the first time I'd ever seen anything like that in a video game. I mean, before I got Resident Evil 4, I was playing Mario Kart. Okay, I was playing Mario Kart. I was playing Mario Tennis. I was playing like the most violent game that I had played before Resident Evil 4 probably had to have been Medal of Honor Frontline or Metroid Prime, which was also a great game, but nowhere near as good as Resident Evil 4. So I got my hands on Resident Evil 4, and I just couldn't stop playing it. But it wasn't just the action. It wasn't just the horror that got me. It was the story. The story is great. It's a great story. You are fighting a cult in the game, and the cult is just pure evil. It's just satanic. It's dark. They do human sacrifice. They're cannibals. They are blasphemous. They are terrorists. I mean, they're just the epitome of everything sinister and dark and evil, and that's what you're fighting. It's not a. Some stories try to play this game where they have the villain who's kind of good and kind of bad. Sometimes you see that sort of thing. So a lot of movies will do this formula. I actually can't. I don't know if I remember any games that had that aspect to it, but a lot of films will do this thing where it's like, is the villain bad? Is the villain good? And they kind of let you decide. This game, they just give you a villain. It's just pure evil. It's like the difference between the Iraq War and World War II. Iraq War, it's like, what are we fighting? World War II, okay, what we're fighting is evil. We know it's pure evil, right? This game, it just gives you a villain. That's what I love about it. It just gives you a villain that's sheer evil. It's like Cortez going to Mexico, fighting the Aztecs. I mean, it's just, bam. There's no arguing that what you're fighting needs to be destroyed. And I love that. I just loved it, and I've always been fascinated with cults. I've always been fascinated with reading about pagan cults from antiquity. And this was a game where you could see just the darkest aspects of cults. Because some cults are like, all cults are bad, right? I mean, be it the Jehovah's Witnesses, Jim Jones, Mormonism, it's all bad. But some cults show their evil more blatantly than others. And this cult that you're fighting is just that. It's a cult that just shows itself as for what it is, right? There's no cult member that's kind of good, right? They're all bad. And I just love that. I just want to kill cultists. That's what I want to do when I'm playing this game. I just want to kill cultists. That's it. And it just had everything that I loved. Everything. It was such a good game. And this remake, it just does everything better. Like so far, right? So far. Now I do have my slight little criticisms. Like I said, some of the dialogue from the original isn't there. But whatever. I have some criticisms about the original Resident Evil 4. As much as I love that game, the original Resident Evil 4 had lousy knife mechanics. This was the knife, and I didn't notice this when I first played the game. But when I first played the game, I thought it was great because when you're playing games in your time period, you don't know any better, right? The games that you have in the present day, in your era, are the best games that you have, right? All the new games that come in your era, in the year that you're living in, are the best games. They're going to be more advanced than the games before that. Now, Mario 64 is still a great game, and you're right, it is. Not saying that the old games are inferior or they get worse over time when you start enjoying better developed games, but the games that you have in a given year are going to be the best developed games. Usually that's the case, right? Like if you look at games that are coming out now, I mean, the graphics are amazing, right? You can't tell me that the games that are coming out now are, graphically speaking, aesthetically speaking, inferior to the games of the past. So you don't really know any better, right? When you're playing the most developed, most modern games, games from the latest technology. But when you play the original Resident Evil 4, I mean, the knife mechanics are just like, it's just boring, right? There's nothing interesting about it. It's literally this. Like Leon Kennedy has the knife, and he's like this. This was the knife skills in Resident Evil 4. There was just one movement. It was just a slash. In this game, in the remake, they make the knife like in the original Resident Evil 4, the knife wasn't your main weapon. It just wasn't your main weapon. It was something you did on the side. If a zombie got too close, you could slash him real quick and kick him or whatever. In this game, the knife is a serious weapon. I mean, it's a serious weapon, and it can break too. If you haven't developed your knife as well, or if you haven't developed it to its fullest potential, if you haven't upgraded the knife to its fullest potential, the knife breaks quite easily, and you have to go to the merchant to get it repaired. And this is another aspect of the game that I really love. It's like there's this. It's a horror game. It's fiction. Yes, I get it. You know, zombies don't exist for now, at least. But there is this realism in the game that I really like. Like this, it's the survival horror character of the game. So when you're using the knife, it can break, and then you can't use it until you get it repaired. And this is part of its survival horror element. But when you do have the knife and it's functional, hot damn, guys, you can be like John Wick in this game. Shoot, pull the trigger, and then you can hit a button. You hit the knife button, and Leon Kennedy's like, he's stabbing zombies in the temple, stabbing them in the throat. And then sometimes you'll have a zombie trying to vault through up a mirror, an open mirror, not a mirror, sorry, a window. So you have a zombie trying to come out of a window to kill you, and as he's coming out of the window, you can punch him or you can knife him, and then as he's seething in pain, you can hit the knife button, and then it goes automatically to a cinematic, and Leon Kennedy just goes John Wick with the knife. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. And with this, guys, man, when I was playing Elden Ring, it came to the point, man, when they make you fight, because a lot of bosses in Elden Ring are optional. A lot of bosses are optional. When they make you fight the two Godskin apostles at the same time, dude, I hated this. Hated it. There's this boss in Elden Ring. It's called the Godskin Apostle. And the Godskin Apostle is a cult leader who has these very creepy followers. And this is an aspect of Elden Ring that I really liked. There is a cult in Elden Ring that exists in the Valley of the Windmills, or whatever it's called. And it's this windmill land. It's full of windmills, and it looks like you're in Holland somewhere. And you have these women dancing around with flowers in their hair, like something out of a horror movie. And when you get too close to them, they attack you with a vengeance, and it's creepy. This is the creepiest part of the game. Well, they have this leader or leaders called Godskin Apostles. And the reason why they call them Godskins is because these women kill their victims and skin them, and then the skins are used as clothes by the cult leaders who call themselves Godskin Apostles. Guys, it is freaky. It is the freakiest part of the game. And there is a horror element to Elden Ring that I really appreciated. But my goodness, when you fight the Godskin Apostle in the Volcano Manor, and if you've played Elden Ring, you know what I'm talking about. I hated that boss, and it took me so long to finally beat this damn guy, and I finally did. And then they make you fight the duo Godskin Apostles, the duo apostles. They make you fight two. One is thin and one is obese, and it is. Dude, when I had to do this, I was like, okay, I'm putting the controller down. And even before that, I stopped playing Elden Ring for months. I had not played Elden Ring for like two and a half months. It felt like 3 months. And then I started playing it again, and they make you fight this duo boss. And I'm like, why? And you have this, and it's not even fun. That's the thing. Like, I don't mind challenging. I don't mind. Resident Evil 4 has challenges, right? It's got challenging bosses. I don't mind challenges. But damn, make the weapon cool. Put some like cinematic counter moves, like in Shadow of War, uh, or like in Assassin's Creed. If you ever played the original Assassin's Creed, there was this thing that you could do in Assassin's Creed where you could counter attack an enemy, and the character goes into a cinematic, and you go medieval Jason Bourne on the guy, and it's really cool. It's badass. It feels cool. It's fun. It's entertaining. Like, okay, I got it. You got this challenging boss, but man, like, put some cool counters. Put some give me a weapon that feels cool, that makes cool noises, that makes good, cool, badass sound effects, that makes riveting, exhilarating sound effects. Just give me a weapon that feels powerful. But no, you have this sword, and I know you can get like the big great sword, or you can get the, I don't know what it's called. I don't remember the names of these weapons. I just remember the Uchi Katana and the Nagakiba, and then there's the I don't remember, but there's like this sword that you can get from the knight in the beginning, which is, by the way, the coolest boss in Elden Ring is the Tree Sentinel. Oh, dude, that is a great. That is a very cool boss. I enjoyed fighting him. I enjoyed fighting the Tree Sentinel. He's really cool. He charges at you with a horse, and I love this about Elden Ring. You have these medieval looking enemies that look really awesome. And the music is just beautiful. I mean, the Elden Ring experience was so interesting and aesthetically beautiful and artistic that it literally made me read Julius Caesar's book on his invasion of Gaul, because I wanted to read something ancient. Because like my reading, the experiences that I seek after in reading are overlap with the experiences that I go after in video games. And because it's not just about action, it's about lore and it's good storytelling. And Elden Ring has some very good storytelling. Elden Ring is the epitome of show don't tell. There's not a whole lot of explanation in Elden Ring about the world that you're in, but as you're exploring the lands between, you pick up all these artifacts and you meet all these people that explain to you, well, there's explanation, but you meet all these things, or you find all these artifacts that illustrate to you, or that harken back to an ancient history that reflects the world that you're in the lands between. And that's one thing that I really loved about Elden Ring. But you know, they're making you fight these enemies that are just annoying, and it's not fun. It's like, okay, let's go to this cave. Okay, let's fight this giant cat. Yes, you have giant cats in the game. Or let's go to this area, and a giant tree is going to try to attack you. Okay, well, let me try to fight this tree. And then you try to fight the tree, and hot damn, the tree is just hitting you. Like, they have these things, like you have these giant tree monsters, kind of like from Lord of the Rings. And these tree things, the giant tree monsters, they just hit you. Oh, and you got to run away, and they hit you, and they just hit you. And it's like, the game is really good at just making you feel annoyed. I just feel annoyed. I don't, and I'm not a hardcore gamer. That's the thing. I'm not a guy. I can't play a video game for 12 hours. Even with the Resident Evil games, I can't sit there and play them. I could have done that back when I was like 12. Okay, easily. I mean, you gave me a video game, when I was 12. I got my hands on Super Smash Brothers when I was 10 years old. I mean, I couldn't stop playing that damn thing. I got my hands on Banjo-Tooie when I was 10 years old. Couldn't stop playing it. I can't do that anymore, because when I play video games for too long, I start getting this feeling in the back of my head that I'm wasting my time, and I should be cultivating my mind and reading and writing and doing media work, which is what I mainly do. So I feel like I'm wasting my time, and then I stop. Also, playing video games for too long gives me this numbing feeling in my brain. I know that people on Twitch play video games for like 12 hours straight, but they're doing it for content, and they're doing it because they're making lots of money doing it. So that's understandable. But I can't play games for that long. And I want to, like, when I play Resident Evil, or when I play a good game like Far Cry 5, which was a great game, I'm going to play for an hour. Usually I'm going to play for about an hour, maybe half hour, maybe just 20 minutes, maybe, 45 minutes. And that's it. when you play Elden Ring for an hour, you never really feel like you've gotten anywhere because you're spending a lot of time just looking for the path to follow to advance and to progress in the game. Whereas when you play Resident Evil, you play for an hour, you've gotten a lot of stuff done. And it's fun. You're firing your guns, you're upgrading your pistols, your shotgun, your machine gun, your sniper, you're throwing grenades, flashbang grenades, flammable grenades. You're killing all sorts of zombies. You fought off a bunch of big zombies. Like it's just action. Resident Evil is a game where it's just continuous action. And I played the Resident Evil 2 remake and I loved it. I played the Resident Evil 3 remake, loved it. Hell, I enjoyed Resident Evil 6. A lot of people hated Resident Evil 6. I love Resident Evil 6. I loved it. I think it was better than Resident Evil 5. And Resident Evil 5 was also a great game. I loved Resident Evil 6. You know why I loved Resident Evil 6? Yes, they are legitimate criticisms about Resident Evil 6. It was largely just action. There was very little horror in Resident Evil 6. The only horror part of the game is when there's like two parts of the game I think that you could classify as scary or creepy. It's in the beginning when you're playing Leon and you're going through this like abandoned hotel and it's dark and there's zombies. Right? That was spooky. Then there's a part later on when there is a giant zombie looking for you and you hide in a locker and you close the door and the thing is walking around the room looking for you. That definitely was a part of the horror element of a Capcom game. But other than that, I mean, the game was an action game. It's a straight up action game. I mean, hell, there's a part of the game when you go to Eastern Europe and there's zombies there and the zombies are dressed up like Albanian gangsters. I'm not joking. Like, you literally have zombies dressed up like gangsters walking around trying to kill you. And then you go to China, which was also really cool. You go to China and you're fighting Chinese zombies, which may be just a slight jab to the Chinese by a Japanese video game called Capcom. Just a suspicion that I have, right? But I loved Resident Evil 6 because it was a long game. Resident Evil 6 was a very long game. And there's a lot of chapters and different stories that you do in Resident Evil 6. You play numerous characters. You play Leon. You play Ada. And there's like 2 or 3 other characters that you can play. I don't remember their names. Jake, I think, is one of them. I don't remember. And you're fighting all these different types of zombies. Chinese zombies that are literally speaking Chinese, which is pretty original. And then you're fighting some zombies, I think, in Latvia or Estonia somewhere, which is also pretty cool. They just went all out. And my God, there is a song in the credits of Resident Evil 6 that I still listen to this day. It is such a good song. It's like a 1980s style song that's based off of the story within Resident Evil 6. And they did, like, you could tell, yeah, a lot of people criticize that game, but you can tell playing Resident Evil 6, they put a lot of work into it. And they did a good job in putting together a long story with a lot of dialogue. It's just fun. It's a very long game that's continuously action-packed. You could play for 20 minutes and you're going to be going through a lot of action. A lot of zombies, machine guns and pistols and shotguns and grenades and rocket launchers, and you just go all out. You just go all out in Resident Evil 6. It's a great game. Then you play Resident Evil 7. And Resident Evil 7 was a really big withdrawal from the action-packed nature of Resident Evil 6. Resident Evil 7 was very limited. You weren't in a city in Resident Evil 7. You weren't stuck in a huge amount of space. You didn't really travel from new place to new place to new place in Resident Evil 7. It was the entire game. You were on a manor in Louisiana and you were fighting some hillbilly zombies. And Resident Evil 7 was creepy. And the reason why they made Resident Evil 7 in the way that they did was because a lot of people complained that Resident Evil 6 wasn't scary. And it wasn't scary. So they said, okay, you want horror? We're going to give you Resident Evil 7. And there are so many interesting influences that you can see in Resident Evil 7. There is even a scene in Resident Evil 7 that is very close to something that you would see in The Exorcist. And yes, it is, when you first see it, it's spooky. It frightens you. And there's just so many things in the Resident Evil world. Action and horror just harmoniously combined pretty well. There's a good syncretism between horror and action and comedy, and there's parts of Resident Evil games that are very dark, and there's parts that are quite funny. It's a great universe. It's a great world with lots of lore and different characters, and I just love the Resident Evil games. I just love them. And I stopped playing Elden Ring for months, and I thought maybe it's because I'm getting too old for video games. Maybe it's because my brain is just sick and tired. And then I got my hands on the Resident Evil 4 remake, and I realized that my suspicions about myself were nonsense. It's not because I'm too old to play games. It's because I just find Elden Ring boring. Because I've been playing Resident Evil 4, the remake, almost every day and loving it. And I love the original Resident Evil 4 so much that I replayed that game over and over again. Like, I played it in normal mode, I played it in hard mode, I played it in professional mode. At this rate, I'm going to be doing a replay of the Resident Evil 4 remake. That's how good this is. And I realized that the suspicions that I had about myself, that maybe I'm too old to play video games and that's why I stopped, they just weren't true. It's because I just found Elden Ring to be honestly kind of boring, and I just love Resident Evil, and I'm back to my normal video game playing self, and it's awesome. Anyway, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I know it's quite a distance from the usual themes of my videos, which are, culture and religion and politics and all that. But, I thought I would talk about something else today and give you my thoughts on that. Anyway, you guys just heard some theology. Well, actually, not really. There's no theology in this video. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. God bless.